now.
Okay, I'd like to call the Port Orchard City Council Finance Committee of April 19th to order. And the first item on the agenda is the financial report. So the sales tax revenue report. Noah.
And
No, I
Jay is in
believe
the
they just
attendees.
joined. Yeah.
Jay is here. You gotta let him in.
Okay, let's see if I can multitask. I don't know if I can.
Yeah, you're the
There it is.
Yep.
Attendees, Jay.
you should be able to click on him and then click admit.
Yep, he should be joining us now. Yay, all right, we got it.
Great.
All right, Jay, we just got started.
Welcome, Jay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we were just starting to go over the sales tax report. So Noah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So it's been a great quarter for 2022. You can see for March, we collected $524,000, which is roughly about $43,000 than we collected in 2021, same period. For the year, we have experienced actually 5.3% growth in our sales tax revenue. And again, when we compare this to the budget, we're approximately 32% over our budget for the first quarter comparatively. For the overall budget, the biennium, we have collected 70% of our biennial target. So we're doing great, well on track to meet our biennial goal for sales tax revenue.
Excellent. Okay.
As we look, as we look down the REIT, I was discussing with the mayor, another great month for us, $204,000 collected. Again, roughly 37,000 more than we collected in March of 2021. For the year, we have a slight, I'll say, decline when we compare Q1 to Q1 2021. We're slightly down roughly 2%. But overall, the bigger picture is when we look at our biennial budget, we have now officially exceeded our biennial budget. So that is great news. So anything as we move forward in the year is going to be over and above what we had originally budgeted and targeted for this biennial period. So all good, positive news on the revenue front.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Moving on to fund balances.
Where did I have my fund balances?
I can report that they all look very positive.
Let me grab it again. I must have when I was orchestrating, I must have accidentally closed it out. Someone has their speaker on. Can they mute it?
Getting some background noise. I think it's you, John. Yep.
Okay. Apologize. Sorry, I had to pull up the monthly budget. I also want to remind the council that I did send out the monthly budget report this afternoon. So if you hadn't had a chance to take a look at it, that's okay. But I do want to make you aware that it was there. So when we look to our cash and investment balances, as we sit here at the end of March, all the funds are very flush. So solid balances in all funds. And I did want to focus on one fund because I didn't know if this would pop as a concern. But if you look here at Fund 304, you'll see there was a decline in fund balance from the beginning of the month to the end of the month. Again, 304 was the fund we used to acquire Bay Street properties. So large expenditure, nearly $900,000 coming out of that fund. That's a grant that we'll submit for reimbursement for. So we'll see a fluctuation this month, and then next year we would expect, or next month, I'd expect to receive the reimbursement and have the fund flip-flop the other way. But all the other funds remain very healthy and very in solid positions, again, as we move forward in this year. Any additional
Looks
questions
good.
on the cash? No? Okay.
Looks great.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so let's go on to the IT projects.
Great. So I just wanted to mention this. I've been talking with the mayor about this. We had originally envisioned on replacing our IT servers next year because they're at the end of their useful life. Talking with our current IT network administrator, he would suggest that we do that this year due to a couple of issues. One, he will be retiring or plans on retiring at the end of the year. And as we discuss it, we think it makes sense for him to be a part of that transition as that process, bringing in new servers and disposing the old servers to ensure it's a smooth transition and we don't lose any of the data and the connections because he has that experience and that internal knowledge. So I kind of like that approach, that before he retires, taking advantage of his expertise, as well as training the new person on what that process looks like and walking through that. The other issue, which we've experienced in pretty much everything we've tried to order this year, is the supply chain issue. So if we wait too long, we're not sure when we would actually receive the equipment itself. So a couple issues I want to bring forward the finance committee. I've discussed with the mayor. I'd like to move forward with that project. He's going to get some cost estimates of what that would be. And I'd like to bring that to the next council meeting if the finance committee agrees that this is a good approach to moving that project up on the timeline as far as a year.
Noah, do we have the ability to use cloud-based servers?
We are.
Yes, and we are.
But just some things still reside on internal servers. We could cut, I know, at least in half the number of servers, if not more. And maybe Steve could come to our next finance committee meeting when he's got the cost estimates to talk about what it is that resides on these servers.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just because I know the future's obviously heading that direction.
The timing, though, you want to take this request at the next council meeting, so that would be before our next finance committee.
Oh, yeah, I misspoke. Yeah, you're correct. Next month. I was thinking next month, next finance committee. We just won't have the cost estimates by then.
Okay.
So just the process is going to delay it. And so that's what I'm getting nervous about. Aside from just placing the order and then waiting for our equipment to actually come.
So maybe at next month's finance committee, Steve attends, and if he's got that proposal ready, and then he can talk to, the reason we want to move ahead a year early is because of Steve's retirement.
Right.
And we would have Steve,
Yeah.
who did our last server replacement, and Matt, who's likely going to take over for Steve, that they work hand in hand so that Matt has intimate knowledge on how all these servers are hooked up. And if we have a problem, he's in the know versus figuring it out after Steve's gone.
We can discuss it next finance meeting, and then perhaps the last meeting, business meeting in May, bring it forward to the full council.
Yeah, that could be the plan. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Any questions, John, Jay?
I
Makes sense.
like the approach.
Okay, then let's move on to the fee resolution. Nick?
Nick, I'm gonna stop sharing so you can share any material you'd like to.
That was just about what I was going to ask you. So it's disabled. I think you have to give me permission.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to share. I'm sharing from tonight's work study packet rather than the materials sent out to you. There was only one major change, and I will explain that when I get there. But the version that Noah had sent out was from earlier last week, and we noticed something that needed to be fixed. So every 1 to 2 years, we bring forward a fee resolution update for all of the fees charged by the permit center for public works, planning, and building permits. I wanted to walk you through kind of the high level changes. And the first of those is the timing of the collection of fees. With COVID, we started seeing a lot of electronic submittals. And so people are emailing us their submittals, but because our credit card system charges a 3% fee, many people are mailing us checks, and the mail isn't always getting there within our required 48 hours that's in our code. And so we are changing the written policy in our fee resolution to kind of recognize the changing world and just explain that we will hold those permits, and if the fee comes in via mail, it can still be determined to be counter complete. The next major change on the list, I want to stop on table 1 actually first, and just point out that all of our building permits are based on building valuation. And so the way that we calculate the building permit fee is not changing in terms of the fee schedule. What is changing is the valuation schedule issued by the ICC and updated every 6 months. And so you'll find that at the end of the fee resolution. And due to inflation, the cost of permits is going to be going up, but it's because the valuation per square foot for all construction types has also increased. And that corresponds to us having additional staff, using more expensive new consultants that we've had to bring on board, as well as the COLA adjustments to wages and benefits in the city. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware that the fees are going up, but it's not because our fee calculation formula is changing. There's a variety of additions to the tables for various permits that either weren't listed previously or the terminology has changed, and we've made some small adjustments to the fee amounts based on our hourly schedule, which we looked at with the finance department and made sure that the amount of time to review one of these permits is roughly proportional to the amount of wages and benefits for the staff involved in those reviews. The other big change here is when we passed the interlocal agreement with the fire district, we took on all of these fire permits that previously were handled by South Kitsap Fire and Rescue, in which the old ILA allowed them to charge fees for, but which they did not assess fees for. So all of the fire code permits that are required are based on valuation, and there is now a table for those fire permits that has been inserted into the fee resolution. And very frequently, the plan review for this is being handled by consultants. And so we've made sure that these costs are designed so that if we send out fire review right now while we are incredibly busy, we are not losing money by using our consultants. Continuing through the resolution, and feel free to stop me if you have any questions. You move into the planning and land use changes. We have revised the fees, though not real significantly on land use permits. They're just some minor adjustments based on what we're seeing in terms of the time spent on review. There were a couple of critical areas permits that weren't previously listed in our land use table because they're not frequently used, but they are something that's available, and we have since created application forms for, but we realized we didn't have fees in place.
Nick, can I ask a question back a little bit further? You have a fee for solar panels. Is that just being updated, or is that new?
That was a fire fee.
It was in the fire code, yes.
Yeah.
Right. So when you have solar panels installed, and I know that the solar installers are not very good about this. They always get the electrical permit. They don't always get the building permit to attach the structure to the house or to review it under fire code. And so there are fire and building code requirements for solar panels, and we just previously didn't have them listed in our table.
Okay, so that is essentially new to our table, at least.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's see here. we've just revised our concurrency review process to reflect how a lot of these things get sent out to consultants to be added to the model or modeled, especially on transportation. And so we have streamlined our process with the consultant, and we wanted to make sure that the resolution matches our current process. And then we added hourly rates for various staff. And so there are a number of places in the code where if we issue a building permit and somebody wants to then make changes to that approved plan, rather than charging them a totally new plan review fee, we charge them hourly rates, and that's specified in various places in the fee resolution. What we realized is we had one flat hourly rate for all employees, but all employees don't have the same salary and benefit cost. And so this has just been updated so that depending on who works on one of these hourly costs, we are assigning a vetted cost that the finance department has provided us for that time spent working on one-off revisions or other miscellaneous activity. And then on page 12 and 13, this is where this document in the council packet tonight differs from what went out in Noah's email earlier today. In the earlier version, work by outside consultants was all one section, and we realized that how we're using our building and fire code consultants is very different than how we are using our transportation, our critical areas, and our geotechnical consultants. And so because we have such a high volume of building permits right now, we wanted to clarify that, yes, the city is using third-party review for many submittals now, and we are not passing that additional cost through to the applicant. Their fee that they pay is covering the cost of us hiring a consultant. It's not like expedited review where they pay the plan review fee and then they pay an extra fee and basically get double charged so that they get reviewed by a consultant first. So we clarified that we are not charging these outside costs except in limited circumstances, and that's if you have to go through a third set of plan review with our consultants, then we will charge for that, because the plan review fee is not going to be enough to cover the actual cost of doing that work. Likewise, if you have a project that with a valuation exceeding $10 million, so we probably have a courthouse coming, we have a mixed-use project on Bethel that we're expecting soon that's going to have a valuation well north of $10 million. It's possible that our plan review fee is going to cover the amount, but we wanted to make sure that if we have to send this out because it is so complex that we can't do it internally, that we are recouping our actual expense of getting that plan review done. So this section of code is really meant to just clarify when we charge extra because we're using a third party versus when we are just absorbing that cost as part of the fee schedule that is earlier on in the fee resolution.
Jay has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
And Nick, so just I know this is probably simplistic, but when you talk about charging extra for consultant as opposed to absorbing, how much are we absorbing as a city that we're not passing on to cover our fees? I guess that's that kind of concern to me a little bit.
Well, I don't think it's very much. I think the plan review fees are covering our consultant costs right now. I think it's really those really complex projects where it's possible that the plan review fees wouldn't cover that cost. And I think that all of our consultant contracts specify that. So the fee structure that we have, we charge a plan review fee and a building permit fee. The building permit fee, if it's $100, the plan review fee is 66% of that, so $66. In our consultant contract, the consultants are taking 55% of the building permit fee as a plan review fee. So we still have a 10% cushion for each plan review that's coming in, but they will not use that fee structure for those really complex projects, essentially. So unless there's a whole lot of back and forth, or there are deferred submittals or other sort of unique circumstances, we should be covering our cost for the consultant, except that the planners and the engineers also have to sign off on building permits, but those are not necessarily built into our building permit fee structure. So there is cost to having our engineers and our planners make sure that it complies with design guidelines and making sure that the water connection fees are paid and they've applied for the correct water permits and the ERUs are right. And so presumably that gets covered in that remaining 10% of the plan review fee, but that's potentially where there might be a little bit of leakage, I guess.
Okay, it was just the word absorbed kind of threw me for a loop. So thank you.
All right. So moving on to, so table 21 here does include our third-party hourly review rates for those two circumstances in terms of how we would bill those costs. And those are straight out of our existing consultant contracts, and our consultants all charge the same hourly rates. Moving on to section G, which is like I said, we separated one section into two. This is largely unchanged. This deals with geotechnical reports, critical areas reports, traffic reports, and we had been using a model where we take a deposit and then we have to track this deposit, and once the bill comes in, we issue refunds. What we're finding is that our consultants are able to give us a pretty accurate fee estimate on the front end of the review. We send that to the applicant. Once they pay their fee, we proceed with the review. And if there is a refund, we give them a refund, but we're not tracking and holding deposits is not really an ideal situation for our admin staff. And so this is really a process improvement that I think our consultants have worked with us on, and we feel comfortable with the people that we're using, that they're giving us accurate information. And, when they send us a task order for $5,000 to review a traffic report, we're getting a bill for, $49.75 and are issuing a refund of $25. We don't need an additional deposit on top of that. So that's the one change to how we handle that consultant piece. And then there are some suggestions from our attorney about our appeal fee language, and she suggested striking one particular section to be consistent with code. And then we did also propose amendments to our refund policy. There's a lot. Our old refund policy basically said that we wouldn't refund over a certain percentage of the initial fee that was paid. There are a lot more nuances to situations where people are seeking refunds. And so this policy is really intended to clarify that, the technology, for instance, the technology fee, for instance, is not refundable. Once we've taken the step of entering it into our permit system and processing things, that is work that we've done, and that's not refundable. So really the resolution just seeks to clarify the timing of the refund, making sure that you're not giving refunds on expired permits. And it just provides a little bit more detail there. Finally, I mentioned the building valuation table, and this is really where the building permit fees are increasing. And if you go to the R3 portion of the table, and then you have to go over to group, I think it's group 4 is what most single families homes are falling under. You've got a $30 per square foot valuation increase. And so that is not a small increase, but that is tracking with what we are seeing for building construction costs. And so in the packet, after there's a clean version of the fee resolution as well, we did prepare a comparison showing how the building permit fees are going to change as a result of this fee resolution update. And so I think it was several $100s. Here's the comparison of the current valuation per square foot and the new valuation, and it's about a $658 increase in a building permit fee. And then finally, we included the salary information from the finance department in the packet as well. But I think the comparison is really important, and with the volume that we're seeing and the amount we're relying on consultants and the needs we probably have for an additional plan reviewer or inspector, I think this is probably justifiable.
What, Jay?
Yeah, Nick, quick question. Because in the opening, you said it's been almost 2 years since we, have raised our fees. Is this something that should be looked at annual or tied to the cost of living?
I think annually is ideal. It's just sort of fallen behind for a variety of reasons. We were also, we've set our a number of our fees to adjust on March 1st based on the CPI adjustment. And so we didn't want to bring forward the fee resolution update and then have the CPI adjustment in March, because it means we're going to have to update all of our forms twice. We were actually trying to bring this to the finance committee in March, but then the meeting was canceled. And so we were hoping that we could update everything on the website and get all of our forms up to date once per year. And it just, it fell a little behind this year. And yeah, I think once a year is really ideal, especially because this building valuation table is updated annually. And so, we try to do that. And in some years we've updated this more than once per year, but we've just been really busy in the last 2 years here.
The difference on this doesn't use CPI like many of our other index, increases. This is based on building valuation is the driver on this. So it's a little more work than just saying we're going to increase it every year based on the CPI. Nick's department that's a bit overwhelmed has to go through and redo all this stuff based on building valuation. So it's a bit more of work, but we should strive to do it every year.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Nick, just for curiosity, the current fee, when you're trying to show the comparison, is the 122.46, the 22.52, and the 14.63.80, those three add up to the current fee?
Well, the 122.46 is the current valuation per square foot for a single family residence. So that gets fed into table 1 of the resolution to determine your actual permit fee. And so in this case, we're assuming a 2,000 square foot house, which comes up with a valuation of $244,000. That, once it's entered into the table 1, gives you $2,252 for the building permit.
Okay.
And then the plan review fee is 66% of the building permit fee.
So it's really just those two then, the 22.52 and the 14.63.80.
Yeah, and so that will become 26.51 and 17.23 going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and in reality, a brand new 2,000 square foot home is worth a lot more than $244,000, or I'm sorry, $300,000.
Yeah, we're low.
Yeah.
But
it's right sizing.
Yeah.
By comparison.
Yeah, and I will say, Noah and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and I think if you look at the total building permit revenue for both plan check fees and building permit fees coming into the city, we are pretty in line with our total DCD operational cost. I think that certain tasks that we do in DCD are not supposed to be supported by permit fees. That would be things like code enforcement, and long range planning generally isn't supported by permit fees. But I don't think that our total revenue and our total expenditures for the department are real out of whack at this point in time. But obviously, if we add additional FTEs for the building department next year, or other support staff, or if we make any other changes, we will need revenue to support that.
We good to move on?
Yep. Anything else? Any questions? All righty. And the proposed development agreement.
Yeah, so I'm just going to speak to this. I don't have a clean copy that is ready for public release yet. We still have some, our attorney has been reviewing this and marking it up, and we just sent revisions back to the developer. but I think we're pretty close to an agreement. The Sydney apartments, that the Tarragon project there with the 230 or so apartments at Hovde and Sydney Road, that developer has purchased the property across the street. I believe it was from Pat Waters. If you're familiar with that property. They are now applying to build, I think it's 110 or 115 townhomes across the street from their apartment project. And as part of that project, we're requiring them to build the other half of Sydney Road Southwest, basically from Ruby Creek north to Glenwood at Sydney Glen Elementary School. And we're actually asking them to also extend the sidewalks all the way to the front door of the elementary school so that there are safe walking routes to school for any children that might live in either of these apartment complexes. Because that Sydney Road project is part of our traffic impact fee calculation, they are eligible for a credit, and the city is actually obligated to grant them a credit if they build improvements that are the basis of our traffic impact fee program. The total impact fees that are due for this project are not that high. I think it's about $330,000, and they are required to build about $700,000 in improvements. And so we are getting a good deal here because we give a credit against the impact fees due for the project, and we get a much more valuable thing that is constructed. So in this case, we're following the same template that we've used for other impact fee credit agreements. They will post a performance bond at the time the building permit's issued to guarantee that they complete the project. Once the certified project costs have been reviewed and approved by the city, we will then release that performance bond, provided that the improvement value does in fact exceed the amount of impact fees that were due on the project. There is one other thing they're asking for in this agreement, and I think given the value of what they're constructing for the city and also where they're at in their permit process, I think it is a fair thing to do. And that is they would like to vest to our impact fee, our currently adopted impact fees through February 28th of 2023. And as I mentioned earlier during the fee resolution, we do our CPI adjustment on March 1st of every year. So transportation impact fees are not expected to change between now and March 1st of next year. Park impact fees are expected to increase. However, they are at the point in design review where they're probably 30 days away from issuing or for being able to pull their building permits. And while all the building permits are ready to be pulled, they're going to probably pull them in 3 or 4 buildings at a time and kind of drag this out over 3 to 4 months as they get ready to start on foundations on their new buildings. So they are asking to be locked into the old park impact fee. And so if we're going to talk about that at work study tonight, but they have the ability to just go ahead and pick up all the permits and avoid the increase in park impact fees anyway. And so I think from a workload standpoint for my department and trying to get all these permits out the door, we would actually benefit from being able to draw this out over the course of the year, because like I said, their engineering is ready for approval. Their building permits are I think 16 out of 20 townhome clusters are ready to issue at this point, but they have to have this development agreement in place before they'll pull the permit. So they are asking for a little bit of flexibility on the park impact fees to make sure that they lock in the existing rate. But we are getting a huge transportation benefit because of the cost of what they're building for us relative to the credit they're getting.
As well as the benefit to your department of spreading the workload.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Nick, that sidewalk improvement is on the west side of the road only?
It is, and the other apartment project is building the sidewalks on the east side of the road. So we will have a complete street from Ruby Creek to Hovde, and then on the west side we will have a half street improvement going north towards the school. And we're still trying to work out exactly what that sidewalk going to the school looks like, because there is a stormwater ditch and power poles and school district fencing in the way, and the grades aren't real favorable. And so we are looking at creative solutions to provide a safe walking environment to get to that school. And we are not looking for this developer to be moving power poles there, because that probably kills their project in terms of cost. So certainly from Glenwood to Ruby Creek, the sidewalks will be in on the west as part of this project.
Okay, sounds like a reasonable deal to me. I see Sean's nodding his head and so is Jay, so sounds good.
Right. So, and that is scheduled right now. I believe we're going to take that to this full city council for a vote on the 10th of May, which it's not on a work study agenda between now and then. So hopefully we can just discuss that in the committee reports and mention that that's coming forward, and I'll be sure to email it out to the full city council well ahead of time.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
great. I
So
guess.
facilities, that's me.
Mayor?
You know, shouldn't come in as any surprise that we're running out of room. We keep hiring people, and until we've got some plans to remodel some space down in the police department, and the chief's going to talk here at the end of the meeting here about staffing, but setting that staffing aside, when we get fully hired up in the police department, we're out of space for our detectives to have some place to work. So the chief's been out. I gave the chief a couple of contacts, and I don't know if you went and looked any of those spaces out there yet, chief, but we're looking at a commercial office space someplace to rent, and to at least through the end of when the city hall remodel happens anyway. And when we're in a remodel, we're probably going to need to have some offsite workspace to continue operations. So it probably makes sense to get out in front of this. Just wanted to chat with you a little bit about it. And Chief, did you get a chance to look at any of those spaces?
No, Mr. Anderson, I've been playing phone tag and schedule tag, but we're trying to get it done this week.
The most promising one is probably out on Bethel, because it's all the TIs are done and we could just move in. You know, if we go to do, you know, something that needs to be remodeled, you know, it's public work and it gets expensive. It's going to draw it all out. So we're really looking for something that's, you know, 1,000 to 1,200 square feet, and we put a couple people in there, and we really don't have to do much if anything with tenant improvements. So just wanted to share that idea with you. I think it's the most reasonable or least expensive alternative versus trying to, and I think it's somewhat of a temporary problem. Although as we're growing, maybe it won't be. By the time we get the city hall remodeled and we add more people, we could end up needing this for a much longer term. But you know, I think we should be looking at probably a 2 or maybe even a 3-year, maybe a 2-year lease with a 1-year option or something of that nature, is what I'm thinking. So you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's reasonable. I was just curious if there's any space on the or in Shire's Gary Cray's building, whatever that one is next door.
There could be down the road, because land title will be moving out, and because they're building that new building across from the post office. It's a good thought, Chief. You might want to consider that too, reaching out to that landlord on the it's Greenwood building, you know, right out at your office window.
Yep.
There's some space on the 2nd floor and the ground floor that land title occupies, and it's much closer.
Okay, thank you.
Anything that would be special about putting police officers in this building where we would need to have additional security, you know, any changes in security and stuff for that building?
At least an alarm system, yes.
But nothing tremendously out of the ordinary.
No, in terms of IT security for criminal justice information with the VPNs and the Surface tablet or the Surface computers that they have, they can, I mean, I'm able to work remotely, so the detectives can do that as well. There would be no items that would need true security, like evidence and things like that would be stored at that site.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So just sharing what our thoughts are as we're out looking for some space. And if somebody reached out to you and said, hey, I heard the police department's looking for office space, and what? So
yeah.
Just trying to avoid that reaction.
Thank you.
So, and the next is personnel, and I'll first one is the IT specialist. We talked a little bit about Steve's retirement, and coupled with Steve's retirement, Matt, our IT specialist, his wife is also pregnant. And so he's going to be going out on paternity leave right about the time we thought Steve was going to retire. So fortunately, Steve's going to delay his retirement till about the end of the year. But we think it's prudent that we have about a 6-month overlap here, because we really won't have, Matt and Steve in here together. Well, because Matt's going to be out on a paternity leave. Let's get this new person hired and working with Steve. And then as Matt comes back from his paternity leave, there could be a little bit of overlap, but not much. And then Steve will transition out the door, into his retirement. We have the ability, in particular, Steve teleworks quite frequently. From a space standpoint, we can manage it because we won't have a desk space for a third IT person. But we're probably in the next month or so, we'd like to get that position advertised and start that recruitment process so that we can get out in front of this retirement. And then if you have any questions on that. No. Good. Okay. And then the other is the sergeant position. It's public knowledge. Our deputy chief, Donna Main, wants very badly to be out on the street, and we don't want to lose her. She's not satisfied or happy with her with an administrative role. She really wants, the passion is to be out working the streets. So, and our synergy organizational assessment talked about having five sergeants. We currently have 4. So I think it's time to pull the trigger on that 5th sergeant's position. So Donna is going to work with us and work through the process of recruiting a new deputy chief. I signed a contract last week with WASPEC to start that process. And Chief, when do you expect to close that recruitment?
It opens May 9th. They'll be open for a month. We'll do packet reviews on the 14th of June, and then interviews are tentatively scheduled for July 6th.
So somewhere in that process, we'll be bringing forward, an increase to staff that creates that sergeant's position. And Donna what it will do is, we've got openings in the police department. One of those openings will become a sergeant's position. So it'll help us out there. And Donna's going to work with us, through this process. She's not jumping ship on us, and is going to work with us as we get a new deputy chief hired.
So what do you mean one of the current positions are going to be moved into a sergeant's? Are you reducing the number of patrolmen for an additional sergeant? What, I don't understand.
Basically, yes. One of those patrol positions becomes a sergeant.
I see.
Okay. And Chief, I'm going to have Chief talk to this a little bit. Beth Deathridge is, while she's out on leave, she's burning leave right now and really isn't working, but her last day on the payroll, I think, is the 1st of May. We have 2 new officers that are in field training that will, 3 in field training, but 2 of them will be finished with their field training at the end of May, if I remember correctly. And I've identified at least 2 more officers that are going to retire in the next few months, and a 3rd one likely by the end of the year. So we keep chasing this, and the chief has a number of he's conducting interviews where we've got, I think, 6 people in background checks right now. Is that the correct number, Chief?
We have 5 in background. We have 1 with a conditional offer. Completed the process, the medical and psych today. I'm just waiting on the paper, and then he has a tentative start date, as long as everything goes well, of July 6th.
And he is a lateral hire, I believe.
He's a lateral hire, yes.
So he has a faster process than the new ones.
Yeah.
Have you seen that our hiring incentives have helped the pool?
No, because the guild has not allowed us to do that. We're still in negotiations with them.
I would anticipate a change soon.
Yeah.
keep your fingers crossed on that one.
So unfortunately, we haven't been able to offer those incentives, even though Kitsap County's up to 25,000 now.
25,000, yep.
So Chief, if you could talk to we're also, because of our challenges in staffing right now, we're contemplating some changes to shifts, and we're in negotiations with the union. One alternative is to go to 12s for a period of time. And the other alternative is adding an hour and a half to everybody's current shift in the model that we're in right now. That would cost us about $25,000 in overtime, but we've got to be able to police our city. And so I think it's something that we need to do and to figure this out, whether it's changing to 12s or so. The chief and his team are working with union representatives to figure out, we got to negotiate that. Go ahead, Chief.
Well, I was going to say, yeah. So the proposal that was brought to us that I think is the most useful is going to 12 hours. So just adding an hour and 25 or hour and 15 minutes to what they are currently working each day, but not changing the days off. We're coming into summertime. People already have vacations. They have plans that they have managing children and things like that. It would likely only be for 2 pay cycles, so 28 days. But it allows us, with some of the unknown staffing issues that we have, to manage that through the month of May. And at the end of May, we'll have 2 full-time employees that will be able to come off of training and just replace that. We aren't ready to pull the trigger on that yet. We're having more conversations about whether or not we want to do that, or whether we just power through the next month in the way that we're going. But our concern is the wellness and the safety of our officers, and we don't want to burn them out when we have unexpected openings. And I can, sir, would you want me to speak a little bit more to that 5th sergeant position?
You can, after Jay's got a question, I
Oh,
believe.
yes, sir.
No, I just, the quick one was just with Donna coming back, and it's more for Debbie. Is there any issues, her stepping back into her former role, just from the guild or anything, rules and regulations?
We'll have to negotiate it.
It can get complicated because layered on top of that is also civil service. So if council approves the 5th opening, I have 2 avenues I can pursue. I can pursue a recruitment for sergeant through the civil service process, which will cost us about $15,000 in about 3 months. Or I can negotiate with the union to just slide somebody back into that. So obviously I'm hoping the union will be receptive and will work with us on the details regarding Donna's leave balances and things like that, and work it out that way.
Thank you.
Chief Scott wants to talk more about the 5th sergeant, and then also potentially contracting with the county for some detective services too.
Yeah, so the goal with this position is, and as you guys know, when I first got here, we had asked for that 4th sergeant position so that we could get us up to about 86% coverage, supervisory coverage on the road. The missing piece that the mayor referenced is we don't have direct supervision in our detectives unit. We have a highly skilled detective that was promoted to sergeant and is currently working graveyard. And when we have detectives in that unit, they're supervised from that graveyard sergeant. Also, we are active with CASER. We just had another call out yesterday morning for an in custody death, and we really need to have leadership with those 2 detectives. Also, the goal is to ensure that we have good succession planning. So having an administrative sergeant who oversees the detective unit, runs training, and works directly with the chief and the deputy chief is a position that can rotate and allow our sergeants to continue to improve their professional administrative skills, so that when the deputy chief's position opens again, we don't have to continue recruitment outside. We can start building our people to take those positions over. And it gives us a framework for as we grow as a city and as we grow as a department.
Chief, before you jump into the detective issue, our next biennial budget, we're likely asking for 1 or 2 more police officers. And, you know, I'd like to say that the chief has 5 in backgrounds right now, but our success rate tells us that likely 1 of those will make it through the process. And then we're going to start another process. But in the unlikely event that we find 3 rock stars, I might be coming to you and to say, hey, I'd like to hire 1 of these police officers that we're probably going to have in the next budget anyway, now versus, you know, waiting if we find the right people. Today, you know, the process has been playing out. I don't think it's not realistic it's going to happen, but someplace here, maybe this year it could. And if it does, I want to have more conversation about that.
Well,
Sean.
you'll have my support with that. We've talked about this for years about how we've been understaffed. And so whatever we need to do to be able to give you guys the tools to get up to where we need to be, fully supportive.
You know, right now our police officers just going call to call to call. And Chief, if you could talk, I know there's an acronym for this, but what we'd like to create is a two officer team that doesn't have patrol responsibilities, that they are out doing traffic emphasis. They're out on our boat in dealing with derelict vessels and other boater safety issues, and they're on their bicycles. And that's their function, is to be out doing, you know, I don't know that writing traffic tickets is community outreach, but it's definitely, you know, Jay thinks that all the speeding happens in McCormick Woods, but I can assure you it's one of the biggest, that and homelessness are probably the 2 biggest complaints I get all the time.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that real briefly, and then I'll talk about the detective issue that we have, and then I'll quit overwhelming the meeting. So what the mayor's talking about is having either a community response team or a PROAC unit or something that we can, you know, we can determine the title of it, but the goal is that they work hotspots through the city. So if we are having an issue, as the mayor referred to, with derelict boats, they go out and that's what they do. They aren't responsible for shagging calls. They go and hit problem areas. Or if we know that we're having issues with vehicle thefts, they can work that. If we have you know, a burglary ring that comes in and starts doing rooftop burglaries, they can work those issues. They can work traffic emphasis, but they are a unit that can just go deal with problems and allow our patrol officers just to respond to 911 calls, because those are up significantly over the last 3 years. The detective issue that we're having right now is with Detective Deathridge leaving, and she's been off for about 5 weeks. She's got another week before she's fully retired. We do have a detective selected to go into that unit. However, because our staffing is low, we are not prepared to do that. And again, our more skilled detective is on graveyard, and we need to have that person in patrol as well. The fact that we can't staff that unit doesn't stop major crimes from occurring. We have sex crimes that continue to occur. We had 3 shootings last week. There is plenty of work that has to get done. So I did reach out to the sheriff's office, spoke with Sheriff Giese last night to see what their capacity is about maybe having a very, very short contract with them to help us manage some of our major crime caseload. We owe it to those victims to get this stuff done. We can't just say, oh, we're just don't have time right now. We have to figure that out. So when I have more information from Sheriff Giese, I will bring that back to everyone.
It's just the right thing to do.
Any comments?
Strongly support it.
Thank you.
All righty. I guess that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there anything for the good of the order?
Debbie's been here. Debbie, you have anything from the HR world you want to share with us? I think we've got a great candidate for our public works inspector position. He's starting next week, I believe.
Correct, 27th.
Yep. So we're very excited about that. I was concerned we weren't going to find a candidate, and we actually had two pretty solid candidates. So this individual is coming to us from one of our consultants. So
yeah, I will ask all of you to knock on wood and cross fingers and toes, because Port Orchard so far has been very fortunate in this very interesting recruitment world we're in. We've we've had to go for a while in a couple of positions to get candidates, but we're hoping our good luck stays with us as we recruit for higher level positions like the deputy chief. So we're a great place to work. We're trying to get that word out, and just need one applicant, one good applicant for every position, right? So we're getting there, and we're doing okay so far. Little smaller numbers than we're used to seeing, but we're finding great people.
I guess in some cases we need 4 or 5 good applicants.
You're
We do.
absolutely right. You're absolutely, and we're doing more police oral boards tomorrow to help find those. So we're certainly putting in the hours on that regard, and can't thank council enough for getting an HR specialist in here to help me. Otherwise, I would be jumping out this second story window.
I see Noah's got his hand raised. You're,
Jay
and then
has-
Jay too.
Yeah, I just had one comment to remind the finance committee. So early during the COVID pandemic, we were having troubles with staffing issues, sending people home. So one of the financial policies that I could act on as the treasurer of the city under RCW 4309-240 was to create exceptions for the daily deposit of our cash receipts. That allowed us to better flex our schedules and work around people's availability to make those daily deposits at the bank. So we've been operating under that original authority that I sent out to the court department as well as the finance department to make those. I talked to the mayor about this today. I'd like to continue with that policy. As we have now become remote deposit, meaning as checks come in to our office, we are scanning those and depositing those remotely. We are no longer taking those checks to the bank. So now we are only making deposits which are cash coming across the register, and the frequency and volume of those cash has dropped significantly over the last couple of years. So on average, we collect maybe $1,000 per week. So thinking about, again, managing the staff in this new teleworking world, I'd like to continue that policy of at least making one deposit per week with some minimum thresholds that you know, if the mayor proposed $5,000, if it was a $5,000 or more, we would make that immediate deposit. So I just want to remind the finance committee that, you know, we have already enacted this authority, and I'm going to continue it because I think it makes sense for our staff as we continue to provide that flexibility. And of course, if there are certain deposits that make us uncomfortable, I'll say, let's make the deposit, let's take it to the bank, let's get the cash out of the till. But at this point, we've been averaging very little in the cash, and so it doesn't make sense to go make a $5 deposit at the bank if we could wait another day and collect some more cash to make that deposit.
Makes sense. So, Jay?
Yeah, just real quickly, Noah, do we have to change anything in our language since we did that because of COVID? I think it's a great idea. I just didn't know if there was a policy that would have to be massaged.
Yeah, no, great question. When I talked with SAO about this, they said, no, as the treasurer, you can enact this policy. It's always wise to keep your board abreast of any policies that they need to be aware of. So this is my opportunity to make you aware of. I'm going to continue this. This is what it looks like, but there's no action, no resolution, nothing that needs to be done by council. I'm just kind of keeping everyone informed about how we're continuing to evolve in our operations.
Support it as well.
There's just days we're going to the bank for $5 or $10 and go do the exercise of deposit tickets and all of that nonsense.
Well,
So
Debbie might appreciate it as the wellness committee person, but anything else for the good of the order? If not, then
see you guys in a half hour.
Finance committee meeting,
See you in 20 minutes.
25 minutes.